Joe Hortiz has taken an extremely measured approach to free agency in the offseason the last couple of years, but this is year 3, and it's time for this team to take on an all-in mentality.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, man? Welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, the Chargers have had some good success the last couple of years, but now it's time. It's time to push the chips into the center, and if you want to go to the big game, it's time to go big game hunting and spend some big money. We're also going to talk about Daiyan Henley. Is he the guy in the middle of the defense to build around? Or should the Chargers be looking maybe in a different direction there? And we're going to tell you why Omarion Hampton is definitely going to go over 1,000 yards rushing in Mike McDaniel's offense in 2026.
Yeah, I am buying all of the Omarion Hampton stock if anyone is selling it. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with a bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. David, it is Buy or Sell Wednesday today, getting into all the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions, and we have a bunch of great ones to get into, but it starts with one that you had put out there on Twitter, basically talking about the Chargers going all in, and it got a lot of response, and I think the responses to it were kind of all over the place, but I think there was a lot of conviction in the Chargers doing more this year and being more aggressive. So today, the buy or sell to start the show off is this: buy or sell, the Chargers need to go all in 2026.
The time is now. The first couple of seasons under Jim Harbaugh, they had to change the culture. They had to learn how to win. They've done that. They have back-to-back 11-win seasons, a couple of trips to the playoffs via the wild card. In year 3, now it's time to go big game hunting, and you got to go forward and make it happen. I think the first thing that happened that encourages that was the Chargers hiring Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator. Big move, definitely the most qualified offensive coordinator that was available. The Chargers saw him. They got him in the building. They did not let him leave. They put him under contract. And there are several other things that the Chargers absolutely have to do in order to go push all the chips into the center. First and foremost, they have to go spend the money. It's time. You've done a great job of being measured and getting a lot of guys on cheap contracts that you got a lot of contributions from, but it's been short and few and far between. It needs to be now. Let's go get the guys that we know are going to make an immediate impact and get them in the building. The Tyler Linderbaums, and it's adding intentionally and emphatically to the offensive line. So Tyler Linderbaum, guys like David Edwards, Sia Malu from the Pittsburgh Steelers, guys that are established, proven commodities on the offensive line. And also it's about making sure that your defense has all of the weapons it can utilize going into this next season, which means signing all of your edge guys back. Make sure you bring Khalil Mack back, give him the money he needs, and give him the peace of mind of knowing that you're going for it and you're really trying to go win, because ultimately that's what he wants. He wants to win a playoff game. He wants to win a championship, and you have to sell him and be, very, very convincing that this is the year that the Chargers are going to get it done. It's time to go get all the pieces you need to go win a championship.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think in year 3, it isn't as much about kind of trying to have to do it the right way. And I think the one thing we've seen from Joe Hortiz is being very measured and calculated in how he goes about free agency and not giving out the terrible deal, right? And he hasn't. Like a 2-year deal to Mekhi Becton, which is the biggest year, annual per year that he's actually given out, or average per year. That's not killing them, right? They can get out of that this season, and they built the ripcord into it. But the reason they had to kind of settle for him is because they didn't do more early in free agency, and it was clear they didn't like the class. They didn't want to overspend on him. But they're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive this year and take some of those chances and maybe give out a couple of big deals if they really want to solidify some of the issues that they have. Because I think, to your point, you have Mike McDaniel for this 1 year for sure. That's the only thing
Yeah.
you're guaranteed is that he's going to be here in 2026. You don't want to take that for granted at all, right? And so I think there is a fine line though. Like, hey, are you trading, 2 first-round picks for Justin Jefferson all in, or are you just trying to make bigger deals in free agency? To me, those are two big things. And I don't necessarily think you have to mortgage the future or totally kind of throw away years upcoming, but you have to find the deals and the right people to give them to and make sure that you're not having the fatal flaws that have ended up taking you out of the playoffs over the last couple of years, because it's not good enough. It's good, but it's not good enough what's happened so far. And like you see a team like the Seahawks, right? Loaded roster, right?
Yeah.
Go back to the 2024 Eagles. Loaded. That is the standard. Like, that is the standard of what a great team looks like. Not every great team is always going to win the Super Bowl, but you can do it, right? And those teams were aggressive. Patriots even, that were in the Super Bowl, number one in free agent spending last year. Then you have the Seahawks, fourth in spending last year. And like, for as much as, Kenneth Walker wins the MVP, you could have easily given it to John Snyder, the GM of the Seahawks, for the moves that he made. Because what did he do? He traded Geno Smith, who people thought before his Raider stint was a very good quarterback at this point, right? He traded away DK Metcalf, who before JSN started coming on this year was thought to be their best receiver. He went and traded for Rashid Shaheed, right?
Yeah.
They made the big moves and got aggressive. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to throw away all of your future assets, but it means you can be more aggressive and push more of the chips to the middle of the table this year. And I do think they have to have more of that kind of all-in mentality this season, because we've been adamant about them being more aggressive. Mike McDaniel, give him whatever he needs. Go make sure that you're not having these fatal flaws on your roster before you even get to the draft, because you only have 5 picks once you get there. So you have to be able to make big deals and get guys that give you a much better chance to solidify, especially on the offensive line.
Real needle movers.
But you're right, too. Also, you have to add to the defense, right? Because Jesse Minter's not there anymore, and he was making do with a lot of deficiencies on that side, just as far as like overall talent goes and star powers on that side of the football. Like, you got to invest more and give some more high-quality players to the defensive side this year as well. I don't know if you can keep getting away with that, even though obviously the defense the last couple of years was, deep playoff run worthy for sure. But let's get to this one here from Jackson, who I think makes a good point, saying, buy or sell if the Chargers fail to put together a roster that can get past the first round of the playoffs. It might be time for an uncomfortable situation with Jim Harbaugh. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jackson is definitely right about this one here, so I have to buy it. And I think the thing is this is a results-based business in the NFL, and you got to win. And in the regular season, the Chargers have done a great job of that. They won the last 2 seasons. Jim Harbaugh has gone 22-12. Obviously back-to-back 11-win seasons here, and he's done a great job at every stop that he's been in. When it starts at the very beginning of college football, all the way throughout, he's done a great job of winning and getting those type of results. But this is year 3 now. It's time to go get that playoff success. It's time to go make good on the things that you said in your introductory press conference, which is to go compete and win multiple championships. That's what this is all about. This is what this business is all about. This is what this sport is all about. It's all about winning and winning in the playoffs. So the regular season success is great. I think that's kind of a given, or kind of something we expect. Now it's time to push those expectations to where we all know that you have them, which is to win in the playoffs when it really matters.
Well, and that's the thing, and going back to, all the more reason to be more aggressive now, because I don't think there's really anything Jim Harbaugh could do to get fired after 2026, right? But I do think that if you lose again in the first round for the 3rd consecutive season, you definitely go into 2027 on the hot seat, and that's not the only uncomfortable situation you're going to have to address, right? Because that puts Justin Herbert in a very uncomfortable position. That puts Joe Hortiz having very uncomfortable conversations, right? And this is the thing. You better have a loaded roster, because just to get one playoff win, you're going to have to beat a Texans team or a Patriots team or a Chiefs team or a Bills team or a Jaguars team to do it.
Broncos.
Like, everyone thinks they're going to get better. Yeah, I mean, the Broncos, obviously, Chargers, and Justin Herbert has never lost to Bo Nix, and I don't think we'll lose to him anytime soon. But either way, what I'm saying is yeah, like, it's going to be uncomfortable for everybody. I mean, it's just every year that it happens, it grows a little bit bigger, and I truly think they're really one kind of playoff win away from kind of getting that monkey off their back and being a really, really dangerous team potentially in 2026. But you have to have a loaded roster even to guarantee yourself that, because the last 2 years, once you've got there, your fatal flaw showed up in the biggest way, and the better rosters ended up winning. But we still have more to get into on this buy or sell Wednesday, including it's time to be concerned about Daiyan Henley. We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why the following winter games on FanDuel just makes sense, from medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports that you care about most. FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. I was locked in as the U.S. took second in the gold medal game today as we're recording this, but you'll find yourself looking and being invested in things you never thought you would be, like speed skating races decided by inches. And for me, one of the things I'm most looking forward to, the hockey games. The U.S. team opens up on Thursday. Very excited, hoping that we see the USA hockey team bring home gold and take down the behemoth that is Canada. And you can even bet on the first hockey game right now with the USA taking on Latvia. If they win by more than 1.5 goals, you can get that at minus 650. They're heavy favorite, so I'm looking more at goal scorers. If you went with Austin Matthews, first-time goal scorer in that game, you can still get that at plus 950, which is great juice. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. David, we still have more to get into on this buy or sell Wednesday, and thank you to all the everydayers out there who contributed to today's show by hitting us up at Locked On LAC or wherever you find the show and follow us on social media. We appreciate you guys, and we pull from everywhere. Facebook, YouTube comments, Instagram, you name it. And we appreciate you guys for always coming through and telling us what you want to hear about. And this is a tough one here we have from Jacoby Rosenthal, who says, buy or sell, Deion Henley is not good enough to be our feature linebacker. David, I'll let you kick this off.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it. Just put that out there right away. I think that's definitely overblown. I think we look at some of the numbers. Have they slipped a little bit? Yeah, I think that they definitely have. His coverage grades have gone from a 72.9 to a 51.1. His reception percentage allowed went up from a 72.9 to an 81.3. However, his sack numbers went up from 1 to 3.5, and his interception numbers also climbed from 1 to 2. And also, let's keep in mind, guys, yes, these guys are football players. Yes, they are some of the best athletes on the face of the planet, but they are people as well. And the thing is with Deion had some very tragic, unfortunate things happen this past season, and as much as we want these guys to go out there and be robots and be perfect, they're not. And these things will affect anyone. And he had to fight through that. He had to fight through, a really bad sickness that, really affected a good part of his season. There's a lot of things that happened that I think you can point to and say, hey, these are legitimate reasons why Deion was not performing at his absolute best. To me, I still feel like he has the instincts. He still makes the splash plays. And he also, I think, just as an all-around player, still has all of the skills that I want out of, the modern-day NFL linebacker. And a lot of teams have or want to have a guy with the skills that Deion has.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think the thing is, all that stuff is really true. His brother died in the middle of the season. He did get that sickness. That definitely seemed to take a huge toll on him physically. More drama with his dad, and the murder of one of his best friends. There's really crazy stuff in the Deion Henley, story. At the same time, right? He still has to go out there and prove that he still is that guy now. I mean, the season he just had, even with all of those things, probably cost him from getting another contract from the Chargers this summer, because I don't think you can give him one right now based on that season, right? Because right now, you have one very good season, probably just under kind of all pro level season, and one kind of very mediocre season as far as just what he gave them this season, which is, 45th out of 64 linebackers with at least 500 snaps in Pro Football Focus, grade 46th in run defense, way worse in coverage so far this year, top 10 in yards after the catch allowed so far, or as well in 2025. He just wasn't the same guy, just looked a little bit a step behind at times. And either way, the Chargers have a need at linebacker. Depending on how you feel about Troy Dye will be back in 2026, and that makes you feel okay. Denzel Perryman, a free agent, and I don't necessarily think he'll be back with the team. Very excited to see what Marlowe Wax can do, after some limited snaps last year. But Either way, I still believe in Daiyan Henley, so I don't want that part to get it twisted. But at the same time, he has to show that he can bounce back from all those things, because you're right. I do think he can still be the special guy that we saw in 2024, but he has to, like, this is a really, really big year for Daiyan Henley to prove that he can take that next, step and be the guy for this team on a long-term basis. Either way, you need at the very least whoever his wingman is going to be, besides Troy Dye and potentially Marlo Wax. You can't have all your eggs in those baskets, in my opinion. But
yeah,
let's get to this one here from Roberto Flores, who says, buy or sell, the Chargers make a big move for a cornerback this offseason, whether it's in free agency or the draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm looking at corner, it's always going to be a position that you're going to look to add to at all times. I mean, we've seen and heard general manager after general manager say that same thing, that you can never have enough corners. But for me, I like the corners that they have under contract right now. I like the way Cam Hart and Tarheeb still play the game of football. Dante Jackson had a phenomenal year last year in this scheme. And I think, there's very good reason to expect that, he will, continue to have that type of success with, the same type of scheme and, a defensive coordinator that's, well-versed in this scheme with Chris O'Leary. So I think if they are going to be looking at corner, at adding to that, I think it's going to be more so in the draft for me than it would be in free agency.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, your top three guys are still coming back, right? Even Benjamin St. Juste, like, I'd be okay if they wanted to bring him back.
Yeah, he was really solid.
He played really well. Cam Hart, I thought, was up and down at times. I still thought Tarheeb still, especially for a second-year corner, a second-year fifth-round pick corner, played very well, even if he didn't have the interception numbers. Yeah. But Dante Jackson was that guy, right, for them last year. Like, he was really good. Third in the NFL in passer rating allowed of anyone with at least 500 coverage snaps. 57.2 passer rating allowed, tied for third in the league in interceptions with 4, 7th in completion percentage allowed, and top 15 in forced incompletion percentage. Also one of only 6 corners to be penalized 1 or less times.
That's
with
crazy.
500 snaps.
Just legit, really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's, to be that good and also not have, to have 1 penalty for the whole season is pretty insane, but the one thing they could really look to add is just a better tackling corner, right, to have on the field in certain situations, especially because both Dante Jackson and Tarheeb still both finished in the bottom 10 in missed tackle percentage. So both those guys have to be better tacklers. Maybe you need a more physical guy. I know Cam Hart is definitely better in that realm, but also has, some liabilities in coverage just as a big, long defender who's better in certain matchups than others, right? As a big guy who doesn't have the same kind of quickness those other guys bring to the table. But if you're spending big money on corner, that's big money that's not necessarily going to the offensive line or the edge rushers that you're trying to keep, or potentially more talent in the defensive line room, which you definitely need as well, in my opinion. So you have to pick and choose. That's one of the positions I'm less concerned about than others. But yeah, you could always use a top end corner. Obviously, if one becomes available, that's always hard to pass up on. Let's do one more here quickly from the Chose One, who says, buy or sell, if the Chargers do not get a deal done with Odafe Oweh, an edge becomes our first round pick. David, you buying or selling that?
I'm going to buy it for sure. I mean, if the Chargers aren't somehow able to bring back Odafe Oweh, which to me, I still feel like that's something they're going to get done. They didn't trade a 5th round pick away to keep him for 8 or 9 games. That wasn't the plan.
Would you say that they wouldn't trade a 5th round pick away to get rid of Oweh? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
they're not trying to throw him away. They're trying
they want
to keep him for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And there's the connections all over the place. Obviously, with the general manager who had scouted Odafe Oweh and brought him in as part of the Ravens organization, they know him exceptionally well. He came over and performed really, really well during the regular season and in the playoffs. This is the type of guy with the athletic profile, the length, the speed, the burst. That's the guy you want to partner up with, and just seems like such a natural complement to Tuli Tuipulotu on the other side that it's something you have to do. It's something that's a no-brainer. I feel like the Chargers will get that deal done. If they don't, then yes, edge is no question about it the number one priority, because you look around, if you miss out those 2 guys, it's a very, very thin room.
Yeah, it is. And Bud Dupree probably a cap casualty, I would have to assume, this year. I just don't think he's good. But also, more than that, Kyle Kennard couldn't show you anything. Healthy scratch most of the season. But yeah, you don't want to have to feel like you have to take an edge rusher in round one. And like the thing is, if you lose out on OA and you re-sign Khalil Mack and you want to run that back for another season, like it's not the total end of the world. But you lose the dynamic ability that he brings to the table that those other guys just don't. And like, even though Tuli had more sacks, Odafe Owe was the more efficient pass rusher, higher pass rush win rate, higher pressure rate than Tuli Pelotu. So he is a game changer in that way. If he gets to free agency, the numbers are only going to go way up. So I hope the Chargers can bring him back. But if they don't, the need for edge skyrockets. If you have Mack and Owe back, you feel like you don't have to spend maybe an elite pick on that, right, or a very high pick on that until maybe 2027. But we still have more to get into, including why we believe that Omarion Hampton will be the first running back since Melvin Gordon to have 1,000 yards with the Chargers, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. And with TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. I know I always use TurboTax and it was great. They were expedient, I would say, in getting back my return this year. And I love just knowing who I'm going to go with every year. But instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person, or you can connect online and they'll handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every single deduction. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it, and you can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th, take taxes off your plate, and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. All right, David, well, we still have some more buy or sells to get into. And again, to thank you to all the everydayers out there for giving us your contributions and your buy or sells for today's show. We are planning an off season full of content and the most content that we've ever done. So there's more on that to come. We'll talk a little bit more about it in the Locked On Everydayer Club, which I'll tell you guys more about later. But more content is coming, and we're going to be able to get to even more of the fan questions and topics that you guys are bringing up. But let's get to this one that we have here from Miles Williams, who says, buy or sell, next season, Omarion Hampton will be the first Chargers running back since Melvin Gordon to rush for 1,000 yards in 2017. David, will he get to that number?
Yeah, I think he absolutely will get to that number. And I think if you look at what he did this past season, he was averaging about 60 yards a game in the 12 games that he played, in the 9 games that he played this past season. So if he just stays healthy over the course of this past season, he goes over 1,000 yards with those numbers in a scheme that I don't think was necessarily doing him any favors. In 2026, I fully expect the Chargers offensive line to be much, much better, both with the returning tackles and with the investment that I am hoping that they are going to make on improving the interior. I just don't think it's logical for them to go a third year with an obvious problem without fixing it. I just don't see that as a possibility here. So I think that's going to improve it. Mike McDaniel and his scheme and his run scheming genius is also going to put him in position to really have a lot of success, especially because a lot of his is zone and going towards the outside. Like that's the run scheme. Omarion had a lot of success running to the edges of the offense, last season. So I think in a much better scheme, in a more balanced scheme with a much better, play calling offensive coordinator, I think he's going to have even more success, not only as a runner of the football, but as a pass catcher as well. I think looking at his all-purpose yards, you definitely want to go grab Omarion Hampton in fantasy next year because he's going to put up some ridiculous all-purpose numbers.
Yeah, I agree with everything. And to that point, he averaged 60.63 rushing yards last year in 9 games, which is including the games he had to leave early due to injury, not including the last game where he had 1 carry. But if you span that over an entire 17-game season, that'd be 1,030 yards. And that's with what he was working with last season, right? So if he plays 15, 16 games, I think this is a virtual lock. I mean, Devon Achane obviously just ran for 1,350 yards on 5.7 yards per carry in 16 games last season. And that was with an offense that was dysfunctional at times just because of the, lack of quality quarterback play, and Tua ending up getting benched. And he was still able to do that and run at a really high level. Chargers will throw more, but I think the offense being more efficient and better will kind of offset, the numbers of them, passing more, because they were only 13th in pass attempts, which I think will go up with Mike McDaniel and Justin Herbert obviously at his disposal. But I think it'll be offset by, the Chargers offense just being better in general and having more plays to be able to run in a given game. But maybe it's not Omarion Hampton we should be looking at. This is from Bolt Up Blue, who says, buy or sell, Kimani Vidal will be RB1 in the Mike McDaniel system. David, this is a hot take. This is a take meant for an overreaction Wednesday in this case.
It is. It definitely is a hot take. And the reason why it is a hot take for me is I'm not even sure that he's going to be on the team next year.
Oh, that's a take.
The thing you have to remember is he's a free agent. So the Chargers would have to re-sign Mr. Kimani Vidal.
So to clean that up, he is an exclusive rights free agent. So
so if they tender him, then he'll be back for sure.
If he goes to any team, it'll be the Chargers.
Yeah. So they probably will, but I don't think that Kimani Vidal is the right complement to what Omarion Hampton brings to the table. I think they do similar things. I feel like he did fill in very admirably when Omarion Hampton was hurt and missed a couple of months during the regular season with that fractured ankle, but I don't think that he's the type of complement that they want. I think they want somebody with a little bit more breakaway speed, and I think that's probably what they're going to be looking to profile to add to this running back room.
Yeah, and I do think we'll see that at some point, right? We'll see a different skill set type of running back that comes in, whether it's a late round pick in the draft, whether it's a free agent flyer on someone that's cheap. I don't think that it'll be someone, that they heavily invest in by any means, but at the same time, I do think that this offense fits Kimani Vidal much better than Greg Roman's did. Like Omarion Hampton, when we saw Kimani Vidal doing great things, it was him getting to the outside, finding a crease, getting some space, and picking up a ton of yards. I mean, with what he was able to do, even if you weren't consistently able to do it week in and week out, that was several 100-yard games that he had behind the same offensive line that killed the Chargers the entire season, right? He showed plenty. He's not going to cost you anything. I do think he'll be back in 2026, but it doesn't mean he won't be competing for snaps. I think they'll give him a chance. You had to have seen the talent there.
Sure.
Now, how much will he get? Is he RB1? Absolutely not. You just spent a first-round pick on a running back. So until Omarion Hampton shows he can't do it, he's going to get every opportunity to do that. But, yeah, he is an exclusive rights free agent, but I don't think he'll cost much. Since they released him and he's not on his rookie contract anymore, if the Chargers give him an offer, he has to take it. That's how that one works. I don't know. Hey, I'm hoping that we don't have to see an extended Kimani Vidal run, because that means something's gone wrong with Omarion Hampton. At the same time, I do think he is showed a lot of improvement in pass protection, and blocking.
Yeah, he had a great year for the Chargers, and the Chargers really needed him too.
They did. They really needed him too, and he just showed talent, man. He did take one of the outs. He broke a home run, right? He had some big chunk plays, and he was dealing with a pretty adverse situation as far as having, by many metrics, the worst run blocking offensive line in the entire league. Still managed to put up some big games. So did more than enough for me to think he'll be back with the team, and they're going to give him every chance to, have a role on this team in 2026. But let's get to this last one here from Big Daddy E. Maybe a conversation not enough people were having. His buy or sell today is the Chargers should invest in another weapon at tight end. Always appreciate you guys from Big Daddy E. David, what do you think about investing in another tight end?
I understand it. Obviously, you want to have as many weapons as you possibly can, but to me, I think the Chargers already have a lot of mouths to feed, and I think with a better play caller, I think they're going to be able to utilize the weapons that they already have a lot more effectively. You got Ladd, you got Trey Harris, you got Aronde Gadsden, obviously Quentin Johnson. The only tight end that I would want if the Chargers were to go get somebody is Kyle Pitts. I mean, go get Kyle Pitts if he's out there. This is the guy who had over 600 receiving yards in his last 3 seasons and went over 900 receiving yards last year with it, really his big breakout of his NFL career. And he's only 25 years old. So if you want to go, grab, one of the best playmakers at that position on the market, then fine. That's kind of who I would want it to see it be. And just imagine Kyle Pitts on one side, Aronde Gadsden the second on the other. Pick your poison, and not to mention Ladd on the other side. I mean, it would just be an absolute nightmare.
It would be a ton of mismatches for sure. Not many people can match up with that. Just physical, those guys physically But I would very much disagree with that. I mean, I think Kyle Pitts, like the thing is now you have two tight ends who don't block and can't block, right? Like you already have Rondé Gatson. Rondé Gatson's not going anywhere. I think if they do invest in it, obviously Big Daddy here is saying weapon at tight end, right? So how are you defining that? Like Kyle Pitts is a weapon at tight end, like by definition. Like he's a guy that, is a mismatch. You can do a lot of things within the passing game, but I don't think you can have two liabilities. I think if you're going to go in the direction of adding another tight end, you're going to get someone who can do a little bit of both. He's probably not the receiver that Rondé Gatson is, but is a better blocker than Rondé Gatson is that you can use in more different, personnel packages, that it's not an obvious tell that you have a guy out there that can't block when you have a tight end on the field, because Rondé Gatson has a long ways to go. That being said, he'll have a role, right? Like, yeah. I think that Mike McDaniel probably wants a more do-it-all tight end if they're going to add one, a guy that can do a little bit of both. It doesn't mean that Rondé Gatson's going to disappear, but not having a tight end that, is a decent receiver but also can be a decent blocker is definitely a detriment to kind of any offense. So I do think they could go try to find somebody like that. I don't think it's going to be big money. I don't think it's going to be a high-round draft pick, but I do think you need to get somebody who, unlike Tucker Fisk, who's basically just a blocker, or Will Dissly, who's just a blocker, or a Rondé Gatson, who's just a receiver, find somebody who can do a little bit of both, that can be even just an average blocker and also bring you an average receiver, because we've seen average tight ends and Mike McDaniel have put up big numbers in this offense. So I do think they could be looking for that type, a more do-it-all kind of guy. Like, I mean, look at the best tight end in a Shanahan system is the tight end that plays for Kyle Shanahan. And you're not going to get George Kittle, right?
Right.
But that's what you want it to be, right? Sure. That is the prototype in this offense. Get a guy who can do both. So I don't think you're getting a George Kittle, but I do think they would be interested in finding someone who can do a little bit more in the running game and also the passing game, even if they're not as explosive a receiving option as someone like Rondé Gatson is, who just broke the franchise record for rookie tight ends in their history. So it shouldn't be also thrown away even after being in a healthy scratch the first 2 weeks. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Thank you to everyone for checking out today, and also just for being an everydayer and always being here. To make sure you don't miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media, where a lot of you contributed today, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you want a little bit more, you can do that as well with the Locked On Everydayer Club, where you can get an ad-free audio version of the podcast every single day for $5 a month, and also get exclusive access to our Locked On Chargers Discord channel, which we're kind of planning out right now what we want to do with that in the offseason, because the offseason is here. And there's only one show that's going to continue coming to you every single day, because they were the only every single day show, because it is Locked On Your Team every day. But we're back to you guys tomorrow with whatever the latest news is. Until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.